Welcome back to 757 Saturday Sports Talk, powered by Larry King Law. Matt Hatfield here with you, and at this time we are joined by a special guest here on ESPN Radio 94.1. If the dog days of summer have got you down, well, we have just the pick-me-up for you. The college football guru himself, football forecaster extraordinaire, his college football Bible is out. It's the very best, the book the experts cannot do without. We say hello to the man, the myth, the legend, Phil Steele here with us. Phil, how's the summer treating you, my friend?
Oh, the summer's going great, man. In fact, so much better than last summer. You know, last summer we're wondering if we were going to play football this year, and then they go and change all the schedules on me. At least this year I've talked to coaches that have had full spring practices, something we didn't have last year, and we know we're playing football this year, and we're going to have crowds in the stadium. So I think it's all just super optimistic right now.
I mean, it's got to be so much nicer for you to not have to worry about that. Will we have a season question everywhere you go around the country on your interviews, and that the pandemic isn't that big gray cloud hovering over the sport ready to ruin things on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis, which it felt like at times a year ago?
Yeah, it was very subdued last year on the radio thing. People would be like, well, Phil, do you think we're having a football season? And I would say, yes, I feel we are going to play football. Because last year, Matt, when I talked to the coaches, while the first-year head coaches may not have known their teams because they didn't have a spring practice, almost all the coaches said, you know what, Phil, you put the ball on the field, we'll be ready to play. So I was optimistic we were going to play football last year, but there was that thing in the back of my head saying, I don't know if we're going to play or not.
I have to tell you, Phil, and again, go check out the website, philsteele.com. The book's available at Barnes & Noble, Lynn Haven Mall in Virginia Beach for all you fans out there in Tidewater, Hampton Roads here in the 757. But I got the digital copy. I got the hard copy. The FedEx package came a couple weeks ago, and panic set in, Phil. The thing was soaked. The package was. So I'm like, oh, no. Don't tell me this college football Bible is ruined. I open it up, though, and thank the heavens above. It was not. The magazine was in mint condition. Now, I'm not advising anyone to throw it in the pool, but I can not only vouch that it's the best in the business, it's the most consistent, the most accurate, it's now the most durable and indestructible of all the college football publications on the market.
Oh, that's a relief. I'm glad you got that. And it tells you a little, that's good for the packing, huh, from FedEx this year.
Yeah. So the 27th edition of the magazine, is it just as enjoyable for you now as when you started?
Oh, even more so, I think. You know, back when we first did the magazine 27 years ago, it was more someone had come in my office, they noticed all this paperwork, and I had my pages laid out, much like the magazine's laid out right now, and they said, why don't you turn that into a magazine? So it was more of a process and putting it through there. But now that I'm on every award committee, I get to talk to 110 of the head coaches. We go to the press later than all the other magazines, which gave us an advantage in the transfer portal this year. It is so much better now, 27 years later, than it was in the beginning.
We'll get to the core of what I know you love and certainly what I enjoy most, sinking our teeth into the teams, the players, the matchups, all that juicy stuff. But as you well know, Phil, many of the talking heads when it comes to college football get fixated on some of the off-the-field matters, and in particular this year, name, image, likeness, and the 12-team playoff. Do you see either, neither, or both of those having a dramatic effect on this sport moving forward?
I think, 12-team playoff may open up scholarships for some of the smaller ones as far as maybe players that say, hey, I want to play in a championship game. I have to go to Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, or Oklahoma. Possibly, that might happen. And with the NIL, though, I think that becomes the rich get richer. The teams with the biggest boosters end up snagging the best recruits. But it'll be interesting to see how both play out. I don't think anybody knows exactly how it will play out, and it'll be interesting.
Talking with the college football guru himself, Phil Steele, here on 757 Saturday Sports Talk. Go get his magazine. Check out the website, philsteele.com, and follow him on Twitter at philsteele042. That's PHILSTEELE042. It's ESPN Radio 94.1. You're home for Old Dominion football. And speaking of which, let's go there, Phil. ODU, one of the few teams that didn't play FBS college football in 2020, yet plenty of optimism awaits under new coach Ricky Ronnie, who tasted considerable success while at Penn State. Give us your outlook for the Monarchs, and in doing so, bigger determining factor in your eyes, who wins the quarterback battle or how this defense comes together?
And the interesting thing is, talking to Coach Ronnie, is that he's an undefeated second-year head coach. You don't get too many of those, huh?
True.
And he pointed out something to me. I said, it's a tough break not playing football last year. And he said, Phil, it was actually better for us in some areas in the fact that there are a lot of teams out there that prepared to play a game for the weekend and then had their game postponed or canceled, and prepared for play a game another weekend, postponed or canceled. He said, we knew what we were doing every single week last year. They were able to train all season long as opposed to the usual where football season breaks you down as the season goes on. They were able to just continue to build. It was just almost having like extra build-up time. Now, there's something to be said for actually playing football. I think the bigger part is going to be the defense. I think they've got capable quarterbacks there, Daryl Mack, Stone Smart, Hayden Wolf, but the defense needs to be improved, and they only have 3 starters back, so it is a little bit of a question mark heading into the season.
Moving on to Virginia Tech, it feels like a make-or-break year for Justin Fuente. The defense didn't exactly meet or exceed expectations to begin life post-Bud Foster. They've got an immense game right out of the chute, Phil, at home against North Carolina. What's your take on these Hokies?
Well, I do think Virginia Tech gets back to a bowl game. That's why I put them on my most improved list. I think they come off a losing season, and I've got them my number 13 most improved team in the country. I think we'll see much better play out of the Hokies, especially on the defensive side of the ball. You know, last year they were switching schemes a little bit. Didn't have the benefit of spring practice. This year they got 7 starters back. And defense coordinator Justin Hamilton told me he feels that the defense is much more acclimated to the schemes and should be improved. Also, they should get a more consistent quarterback play. Remember, Braxton Burmeister at one point was taking a hold of the job, and then he got injured and missed a bunch of games and returned late. I think it's good having him there as your starting quarterback all season long. I do believe that North Carolina game is pivotal. If Virginia Tech is going to win the Coastal Division this year, they need to knock off North Carolina. I like the setting, though. It's a Friday night. Enter Sandman. You got to love it for Virginia Tech to open up the year. If they pull an upset of North Carolina, I'll consider them a player in the Coastal Division. Right now, I feel it's North Carolina and Miami are probably the most talented teams, but a Virginia Tech upset in the opener could catapult them to being a legitimate contender in the Coastal.
One of many great games that first weekend in September, Phil. And my goodness, that's scheduled for them. They also go to Morgantown to play at West Virginia, and then early in October they got Notre Dame. So if you're a Hokies fan, there's a lot of big-time games before you even get to November.
Yeah, Notre Dame at home. And you know what? If you are a Virginia Tech fan, look at the situation that Virginia Tech's in for that home game against Notre Dame. They are fresh off a bye for that game. Meanwhile, Notre Dame will have just taken on the previous 2 weeks Wisconsin and Cincinnati, a couple of very physical teams in back-to-back weeks in huge games. They'll be playing a 6th straight week. Meanwhile, Virginia Tech, fresh at home off a bye. I think it's a really good situation for Virginia Tech to potentially spring the upset.
Interesting. We'll get to Notre Dame in a bit, but that Commonwealth rival in the ACC for Virginia Tech, the University of Virginia, similar to the Hokies, Phil, they took a dip defensively. They do have an experienced quarterback back. Questions for them, though, enough weaponry around him, and can the defense take a step up? How do the Cavaliers look to you?
Yeah, I think the defense is going to be the key. And I'll be honest with you, last year when I looked at Virginia, I said, you know, they lose Bryce Perkins. Bryce Perkins was, 90% of the offense in 2019? Mm-hmm. They're going to take a dip. And Coach Mendenhall told me, Phil, we're going to be just fine on offense. And guess what? They went from averaging 389 yards per game to 423 yards per game last year, even losing their star quarterback that was such a big part of the offense. So, you know, when Coach Mendenhall tells me he's good, comfortable with the unit, I'm gonna believe him. And you know, you look at the fact that he likes what they've got coming back at outside linebacker this year. He likes what he's got in the defensive front seven. So I think their defense will be improved. Coach Mendenhall feels very confident about the defense, even with just 6 starters back from a unit that allowed 443 yards per game last year. And Brennan Armstrong's not the prettiest quarterback out there, but he gets the job done. He does have some weapons. I like Keaton Thompson, their wide receiver / running / Wildcat quarterback. I think he brings a lot to the table and makes Virginia's offense pretty tough to defend.
I think with them, Phil, the thing that jumps out to me is how healthy are they going down the back half of the schedule, because tell me if I'm wrong, they could very well be an underdog in each of their last 5 games of the season.
Yeah, definitely in the last 4 games when they play at BYU, Notre Dame, at Pitt, and Virginia Tech. So they got to pick up some wins early and pull a couple upsets late. And remember, 2 years ago, their whole defense was decimated down the stretch. Let's hope that doesn't happen again.
How about the job Hugh Freeze has done? Yeah, we talked about UVA, Virginia Tech, and Old Dominion here in the state of Virginia, but the Liberty Flames, 10 victories. They came within an eyelash of winning 3 ACC games on the road. They beat Virginia Tech and Syracuse, lost by a whisker at NC State. Can Liberty be a top 25 team again, Phil?
I'm not going to put anything past Hugh Freeze. That first year, I was anticipating Liberty would be have a losing record, and they finished 8-5. So they surprised me that first year. Last year, I thought they had a chance of being improved. I didn't see 10-1 coming last year, let alone a bowl victory over a Coastal Carolina team that was number 9 in the country when that one kicked off. You got to love the quarterback. Malik Willis is one of the more. I mean, if you haven't watched Malik Willis play, he was a big-time recruit at Auburn, came to Liberty, and he is a dangerous runner, dangerous passer. He's got Joshua Mack in the backfield, an outstanding tight end, and Johnny Huntley. And, Liberty's defense doesn't get a lot of praise, but last year they only gave up 318 yards per game. And maybe 20 years ago, allowing 318 yards per game was a good season. Now 318 yards per game on defense is great in this era of offensive football. Heck, Alabama gave up 360 yards per game last year. So I think they clearly have the chance. Now, a couple of tough games on their schedule to worry about. At UAB is going to be dangerous on October the 2nd, and then they play at Ole Miss. Hugh Freeze returns to Mississippi on November the 6th. I think both those games they'll be underdogs, but other than that, they might be favored. The Louisiana game also tough, Army tough at the final two, but they get both of those at home. So I think they've got the potential to be back up there again.
It's 757 Saturday Sports Talk here on ESPN Radio 94.1. We're talking with the author of the book, The Experts Can't Do Without, Phil Steele. His college football 2021 preview is out on newsstands now. 352 pages, jam-packed with information. Go to philsteele.com. Again, go pay Barnes & Noble a visit, Lynn Haven Mall, Virginia Beach. They've got copies, but don't wait until late August, folks. Get your copy now because it's red hot and it's the very best. Phil, as we turn our attention to the service academies, as you know, it's a big military area here in the 757, and Army, Navy, and Army shut out the midshipmen last season for the first time since 1969. What do you see with Army and what do you see with Navy?
I think Army is a more veteran team than they normally have, which, they've got 6 starters back on offense, 8 on defense. 14 returning starters is something they haven't had for about 4 years. And I love the job that Coach Monken is doing with Army. They've kept it running the option. They run it well. They play great defense. The special teams is solid. So I think Army's going to be in for yet another good year this year. They've got a couple of tough tests. They've played Ball State on the road early. Ball State's the defending MAC champ. They play Wisconsin on the road. They play a rejuvenated Wake Forest. And, of course, the Army or Air Force, Navy, Liberty games. But I think Army's one of their more veteran teams and should do well. And talking to Coach Niumatalolo of Navy, he felt that the disruption they had last year really disrupted Navy. Navy's a team that prides itself on physicality, and he said they went through the entire fall, as we know, with 0 contact. And did that affect them? Yeah. It really affected them early, especially in that game against BYU where they got blown out 55-3. They were getting destroyed by Tulane at the half, but rallied for the win. But he said that greatly affected the offense because they're normally a lot more physical. They only had 275 yards per game last year. Now they've got a couple of quarterbacks that he likes a lot, in Arline and Lavadier, and I think both those guys are going to do well. You're going to see a much improved offense, and he feels they're going to get back to a bowl game this year. I looked at the schedule, and there's really not a very comfortable schedule here. They play one of the tougher schedules in the country this season, but Coach Niumatalolo's very confident that they can get back to the postseason. And you know what? The last 2 times they had a losing season, he bounced back with a big winning year. They went 8-5 in 2012, and they went 11-2 in 2019. The last 2 times they had a losing season.
One of the things I love about Phil's book, they give you the schedules. They give you a chance to see how every team stacks up with them. They rate the schedules, little tidbits on each of the games, the stats, everything you want in his college football preview as we continue on with Phil here. And Notre Dame back to independent status for them after a season to remember in the ACC, certainly helping them reach the college football playoff. Life for the Irish after Ian Book at quarterback and minus the ACC Defensive Player of the Year in Jeremiah Owusu. How do you size up the Irish?
Yeah, I think Owusu's probably the bigger loss of the two because they plug in Jack Cohn from Wisconsin, who had a very good season in Wisconsin in 2019, to replace Book. I think they're pretty similar quarterbacks. probably put up similar stats. They've got Kyron Williams back at running back, which is in good shape. They had Kane Madden for Marshall on the offensive line, which is an area of need. And last year's defense was outstanding, and this year they got 6 starters back on the defensive side of the ball. Now, I'll say this. Talking to the coaches across the country this year, most coaches told me, Phil, in the spring, we normally go scraping to get it 2 deep together. This year we were 3 deep. Almost everybody's got 16, 17, 18 returning starters. The Irish only have 9, so that's a bit of a concern. And when you look at their schedule, there's not a gimme in the book. They got 12 tough teams on the schedule. However, there's also not an unwinnable game on the schedule. I think the toughest tests are going to be the Wisconsin game in Chicago, Cincinnati the next week, and then Virginia Tech, as mentioned, has a great situational edge there, the USC game. But they're also a team capable of winning double digits. And, in fact, one of my set spot ratings calls for them to go unbeaten this year. We'll have to see how it plays out. But I think the Irish will not have a huge drop-off from last year whatsoever.
I'll be curious, Phil, to see if Notre Dame does eventually join a conference like the ACC here after a year in the league. I know about independent and all the money in terms of the TV contracts, but you got to feel either way on what might happen in the next few years with them?
Yeah, I think they love being independent, and until I see a change at the top there at Notre Dame where the guy in charge is thinking we love being an independent, I think they stay that way.
I love throwing these burning questions out to you. We had one a year ago, and here's one. I think all 7 years of the college football playoff, we've had some combination of Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, if not all 3, 2 of them. Who's the biggest lock to make it? Who's the most vulnerable to miss it? Bama, Clemson, Ohio State.
I think the team that's the biggest lock to make it is actually Ohio State of those 3, in the fact that when you look at their schedule, they could be a double-digit favorite in every single game this year. They're already a double-digit favorite against Oregon in Week 2 at 10 points. At Indiana is the only other test. Maybe the Big Ten title game, if they play Wisconsin, could be a threat. When you look at Alabama, they've got 2 chances to get knocked out of it. The first one would be at Texas A&M, October the 9th. Jimbo Fisher's been recruiting like Alabama's been recruiting the last 4 years. They're a team loaded in talent, and Coach Fisher, when I talked to him, said this year's offensive line, despite losing 4 starters, might be more physical, more athletic than last year's offensive line. So that raised my eyebrows a little bit. They could potentially knock them off in College Station. And then Georgia. Remember, Georgia, I think, only trailed Alabama a total of 2 minutes in their 2 losses in the postseason in the last 4 years. So Georgia knows they can play with Alabama, and Georgia's got a schedule where they're going to be favored in every game with the exception of Clemson. Georgia could be a real wild card. They could knock Clemson out of it and knock Alabama out of it. So I think Georgia and Texas A&M are the 2 teams that hold the cards of either Alabama or Clemson missing the playoff.
Interesting. And as you mentioned, Georgia and Texas A&M, this might be part of your answer to my next question. You've really got limitless options here, Phil. A game or 2 on the schedule you are most looking forward to, whether it's in the opener, later in the season, conference matchup, non-conference showdown. You've got all the TVs and all these games every week. What game or 2 can you not miss?
Yeah, and it's probably 2 of them we just touched on. Georgia against Clemson, first game of the season. Love the return of that rivalry. They had a lot of great games in the season opener throughout the years. I'm glad it returned. And you're talking about 2 top 5 teams duking it out. And then that Texas A&M game in College Station. Last year Alabama beat them by 28, but if you watch the game, there's really 4 plays in the first half that really swung the outcome of the game. I mean, A&M was threatening to make it a 1-score game. They got stopped on 4th down. Bama scores with seconds left in the half and turned it into a little bit of a blowout. But it could have been a lot closer. Some key drop passes, key 4th down conversions. I think A&M gives them a heck of a game, and that's one I'm greatly anticipating.
2 more for the college football forecaster extraordinaire, Phil Steele. Check out his website, philsteele.com. Follow him on Twitter, PHILSTEELE042, and go get his college football magazine. It's ESPN Radio 94.1 at 757 Saturday Sports Talk. Phil, as you look at the Heisman race, Spencer Rattler, Sam Howell, 2 of the favorites there. Is there a player that goes from off the list, sort of like Devonta Smith of Alabama last year? I believe he was the first wide receiver in nearly 30 years to win the Heisman. Guy off the radar that crashes the party as a finalist in New York or wins it?
Well, there's 3 guys that have not been full-time starters that I think have an excellent shot of getting there, which would be DJ Uiagalelei of Clemson, who did start 2 games last year for Clemson. They put up 38 points per game, and he gets handed the keys to that Clemson offense and Clemson team overall. Bryce Young of Alabama. Bryce Young is one of the top quarterbacks coming out of high school. He's a dynamic runner and passer. great arm, and he gets handed the keys of the Alabama offense. And even though it hasn't been announced yet, you figure it's going to be C.J. Stroud at Ohio State. Once again, if Ohio State's a double-digit favorite in every game, Ohio State's had the top quarterback in the Big Ten like 11 of the last 12 years, even with first-time starters. I think C.J. Stroud steps in and could be a Heisman candidate. If you're looking for somebody from a different position, I might throw in Breece Hall of Iowa State. Now, Breece Hall's been one of the best running backs in the country, sort of under the radar, but Iowa State's not under the radar this year. And if he was to do something like rush for 250 yards and upset Oklahoma and rush for close to 2,000 yards this year, I think he would have a chance of getting in there. And he's probably one of the big names in the country that not everybody has heard of.
I love that you bring up Iowa State because they're involved in my final question for you, Phil, and you're so gracious with your time, and we appreciate that. Every year I like to come up with that team off the grid that's not on the national radar from a smaller league. Hawaii one year, San Diego State another. Last year it was Louisiana, if you recall, Phil, and the Raging Cajuns made me look great with that upset right out of the blocks at Iowa State. This year the team I'm really liking a lot is Nevada. It appears they have an NFL caliber quarterback, some quality receivers, enough to get by on defense, and I got a hunch they can knock off Cal or Kansas State on the road in the first month of the season. Am I crazy?
No, you're not crazy at all. And you talk about weapons on offense. You touched on it. You know, their quarterback, Carson Strong, is an NFL caliber quarterback. One NFL Draft Bible, I believe, had him rated the number one quarterback for the draft. The receiving core with Elijah Cooks, Melquin Stovall, Romeo Doubs, and tight end Cole Turner is one of the best in the entire country. They've got a great defensive front seven, and they are clearly capable of knocking off both Cal and Kansas State early on. I think those are big games. They've got some other big games on the schedule, like at Boise, at Fresno, at San Diego State. But with 20 starters coming back, they have an excellent shot at being that team. Another one I want to throw out at you that could pull a couple of big-time wins over ranked teams early in the year is Cincinnati. Cincinnati, I think, is the best group of 5 team out there. They're going to enter, I think they enter in the preseason top 10 this year. After finishing in the top 10 last year, their only loss being in the Peach Bowl to Georgia by 3 points, a game they led almost start to finish. They play Indiana week 3. Indiana's going to be ranked. They play Notre Dame week 4. Notre Dame's going to be in the top 10. They could stand toe-to-toe with both those teams and could very well pull a couple of big-time road upsets.
All right, so tell your friends come September, watch out for Cincinnati, watch out for Nevada. Phil Steele told me to tell you that. Before we let you run, Phil, again, such a blast talking with you. Tell the folks how they can get your magazine, and also when they subscribe to philsteele.com, what do they get?
Well, I appreciate that, Matt. And, you know, the magazine this year, it's exclusively at 2 places. And what this has done is streamline the operations. We were able to get the magazine. Normally when we send the final page to the press, it's about 4 weeks till it actually starts hitting the newsstands. We go exclusively to Barnes & Noble and Books A Million this year, and we were actually at Barnes & Noble about a little more than 1 week after we hit the press. We were already at Barnes & Noble. So Barnes & Noble, Books A Million are the 2 locations that have the magazine exclusively. Or you could go to philsteele.com, and if you go to philsteele.com like you did, Matt, you can order the magazine there. You can order the digital version there. And the big thing about the digital version this year, we're updating the pages daily. So as players land from the transfer portal or if somebody gets injured, we're circling them on the pages, adjusting a few things in there. We'll be updating it all the way to the start of the season on the digital version. So that's available at Phil Steele, STEELE.com. You can also get Phil Steele Plus, which is great, but read more about that when you get the magazine. Check out a few of the pages that talk to you about Phil Steele Plus.
Oh, that's neat. I didn't know you guys updated it with all the changes. I'm glad I got the digital copy now, so I don't have to go with my pen and mark it out in the book. It's just right there for me.
There you go. Yeah, it's something new this year. You know, we got in with IMG Learfield, and they were able to really come up with a great digital version for us to be able to do that.
It's awesome. Well, Phil, enjoy the rest of your summer. I'm sure we'll be in touch, and thank you for all the time today.
Hey, Matt, always appreciate you having on. We've been doing this show for quite some time, haven't we?
We have, and you're the very best, and I look forward to seeing you back in Virginia sometime down the road.
Sounds great, Matt. Thanks for having me on today. Really enjoyed it here on a Saturday.
You got it. That's the college football guru himself, Phil Steele, with us here on 757 Saturday Sports Talk exclusively in Hampton Roads on ESPN Radio 94.1.